Okay, I would first like to say that I appreciate this sub a lot. I've heard this story from my parents years ago, and I was since then not able to let it slide. Every now and then I have a wave of obsession over it, and I want to do research. Sadly, the internet is littered with shit stories like the ones you can now see all over TikTok. I really want to do my research, but all I can find is History Channel, cheap TikTok videos, and stories about 12 feet tall wolves and their hind legs. So here I am, in this sub, hoping to find more genuine information on this topic. This is also the first time I ever post about this. Let me start the story off with my first big question mark. This all happened, not in Navajo areas, not in America, but in Czech Republic. Me and my family travel to Czech Republic regularly to visit relatives. They live in a very small village in the woods. Everyone knows everyone. It's beautiful, and we always go for hour-long walks in the woods. So much so that you could basically drop me off anywhere in the forest on my own, and I would be able to find my way back without a problem. Our stay is always about 2 weeks long, and we share a room with the 4 of us. There isn't much to do there, but every day that we're there, we go for about 2 walks. Small ones, about half an hour to an hour, depending on which side of the forest we enter. Then, when me and my younger brother go to bed, my parents go for one last walk with the dog and return about an hour later before going to bed. About 8 or 9 years ago, I think, it was a normal summer day. I skipped the morning walk, had breakfast when everyone was walking, and joined them on their walk before dinner. When it was time for me and my brother to go to bed, my parents and grandparents were in the living room. I was around 12 years old, and at about that annoying age where you don't want to go to bed just yet. At 12 p.m., when my grandparents got ready for bed, my parents checked on us before going for their night walk with the dog. I pretended to sleep, and when the door closed, I pulled out my iPod Touch from under my pillow. My parents would always stay away for about an hour, so I knew how much time I had to play some games before they returned. After what I think was an hour and a half, I already heard my parents coming back. This was a bit odd, because usually they like to take their time to enjoy looking at the stars. They never get off the man-made path at night, because wild boars stay in the woods and they might still have some younglings, so they could be more dangerous if you enter their home. So from the path you can perfectly see the sky. What was even more odd is that they were not just calmly entering the house, telling the dog good night and getting ready for bed. They slammed the door shut and quickly went into their bedroom. I, who couldn't help but be curious as to why they seemed to be panting and panicking, asked them why they were so early. Instead of getting an answer, though, I was told to go to sleep because it was too late. The next day, they didn't mention anything to me about what happened. Not until I overheard them talking to my grandparents about a huge bird in the woods. I had to ask, and they seemed hesitant, but finally, they told me what had led them to finish their previous day with such stress. They were walking on their path with the dog, enjoying the warm night. Little before their usual stop where they would look at the stars with the dog, who normally always runs ahead of them, seemed to not want to walk any further. Instead, he was looking uphill into the woods. My parents, who didn't think much of it and brushed it off as a deer, went ahead and walked further, until they heard a screech from where the dog was looking at. It was very far away, but they stopped walking to hear if they could hear it again. After a few seconds, they did, and the dog started barking. Not very long after, it repeated itself, but it seemed to be getting a lot closer. The dog, who was normally very brave and protective, started running back home and left my parents weirded out. One more time, they heard the screech that my father described as the sound of a very huge owl, and again, it sounded like it was closer. That was the moment my parents started running home too. Very quickly, it seemed to be catching up to them. But this is where it gets weird. Not only was the noise getting way too loud, it was also getting lower, and the screechiness had turned into something more like a scream. Not only that, they started hearing the creature that was making the noise run. They said it sounded like a human running. 2 heavy feet were following them, only at an immense speed. When they finally got out of the wooded area, the running behind them stopped. My parents kept running and the screaming of the creature continued. It sounded like a mix of a man and a bird, and they kept hearing it for a while. They ran all the way home, knowing that they weren't being followed anymore, but they wanted to get home as soon as possible. My father is a brave man, and even though they never had this experience again, he still doesn't go to that part of the woods at night anymore. Hearing him tell me the story and seeing the fear in his eyes still haunts me. I believe in skinwalkers, but I don't know what to make of this. Do skinwalkers exist outside of America? Can they make the sound of any animal? This will probably be a mystery for the rest of my life, but I still can't let it go. When I was younger, I'd go visit my grandparents all the time. They lived in a one-floor house with an unfinished basement. I never liked it down there. It felt small for a big basement. There was a little door down there that was for storage, and I always got a horrible feeling when going to close it. And let me add that this was a newer house that was about 6 years old. Now during the time I was about 6 or 7, I felt so uncomfortable going down there. Even when I was with someone, I still didn't like it. I remember going down there with my grandma to help her with something. She had to run upstairs because someone rang the doorbell. She said she would be right back, even though she knew how I felt about being alone down there. But I nodded and said, okay. She was gone, and I was alone, and I started to get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I didn't move, and I didn't want to. Even though the lights were on now, this is where everything started happening, and it still gives me chills. The light started to flicker, and I started hearing noises and what sounded like talking, and it was not coming from upstairs, but in the storage room. I heard someone say my name. Here's the part that freaks me out the most. The voice sounded like my grandma. I was confused as hell. How am I hearing her when she's upstairs? I didn't want to move. But me being the curious one I am, I started moving towards the storage room door. The closer I got, the worse the bad feeling became. When I got to the door, the lights turned off in the basement. I wanted to run upstairs and hide, or go home, anywhere that wasn't the basement. I heard my name again for the second time. My grandma's voice asking me to open the door to help her. So I did, and I regret it. I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. I couldn't hear anything but faint laughing. But then the laughing stopped, and the lights turned back on in the basement, and I felt a little bit better with the lights back on. But the downside, I could see a little in the storage room. I saw a small clown doll in the storage room, and my grandma hates clowns with a passion and wants nothing to do with them. So why is this thing in here? Well, I have no damn idea. And then the lights turned on in the storage room. I saw red that looked like blood all over the place. I screamed and blacked out, and the next thing I knew, I was lying on the couch. My grandma looking at me, asking if I was okay. I have no idea if that was real or a dream, but it sure as hell felt real. If you have any idea, please let me know. This happened just yesterday, so it's pretty fresh on my mind. I'm not quite sure what to think of it because it was just bizarre and so unbelievable. I might have just been sleep deprived. So last night, at maybe 2300, I was walking around my block. My town is relatively safe, so I didn't feel in danger. Plus, it was a pretty night. I had been walking around for around 5 minutes when a pale woman with blonde hair and a white dress caught my eye from across the street. She was about my height and looked to be around my age, too. I didn't actually pay attention to her after I first noticed her. While I circled the block again, she was on the same street, a couple of feet in front of me. She was standing on the curb, staring at the cars passing by. It was a main road, so even that late, people were still driving on it. I said hello to her, and she turned her gaze to me. I couldn't see her face super well, but from what I saw, I think she had no pupils or color in her eyes. She just stared at me. After a while, I asked if she was okay. She didn't respond again and simply pointed at the road. I was really confused and didn't understand. Right as a red car started coming down the road, she stepped into the road. The car slammed into her and it was a bloody mess. The driver immediately stopped and jumped out. It was a man in his mid-20s. We both spoke about it, freaking out. He called the police, and I went around the car to see the state of the girl. And once I circled around the car, she was gone. Not gone as in dead. Gone as in she just wasn't there. The blood on the road was gone too, but not gone from his car. After the police arrived, they concluded that it was some big hoax of a kid who didn't know what they were talking about and some guy who went along with it. The blood on the truck was brought to investigation only to be found as paint. Nothing else was put up about it. I'm still not sure if what happened was real. It felt so real, but I don't believe in the paranormal. I don't know what it was, if it was just a dream or if it was real life. I remember it like it was real. I feel like I can't leave the house right now. I don't understand anything now, and I kind of feel like I'm going crazy. Has anyone else ever experienced anything like this?